watching this today, but we'll see. Alrighty, welcome to episode 45 of the Reptile Rejects podcast. Tonight, me and Dom have on Nathan from the Inspired Frog out in Ontario. So I thought I would change it up today and maybe do some amphibian stuff since we did turtles a few weeks ago. I thought I would maybe get more Canadian guests on and get some more variety on the podcasting landscape. I know he just did an episode on the frog rack, which you all should check out after this episode. But yeah, no. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Our pleasure. How are you doing, Dom?
Life is good, man. I'm glad to be on my favorite podcast, the Amphibian Rejects. Should be a really good show. We'll see how this goes. I'm going to warn everybody in advance. I'm going to sound like a bit of an uneducated amphibian guy. I know the basics and nothing more. So this show will consist of me asking the very basic questions for the, let's just go with the other people that are mostly into snakes and stuff. And Michael might take it in depth. So hopefully it'll make a good mix and it'll make it interesting. Thanks, Nathan, for coming on. Really appreciate it. I guess we can do our usual. Michael, anything new with you in the past few days? Or
not too much. I'm just getting ready for another expo weekend, which is why we're doing this show tonight instead of a Sunday show. But yeah, no. Though actually the Sunday after, pardon me, we got Dave Levinson lined up, so that should be a fun show with Dave. We'll see what shenanigans he gets on. Maybe I'll drag Chris on since Dave seems to like to bug Chris all the time. But yeah, no, that should be a fun show too coming up. And then, yeah, we got Edmonton this weekend. So if anybody's in the Edmonton area and listening to this, well, I'll probably see you there. Yeah, not too much animal-wise. Making sure the newts are all good, water changing everybody, changing water, cleaning poop out of snake cages like the usual. So, yeah, no, not too much new. How about you, Dom? Any more eggs or anything or not?
Well, I had my first clutch of inlands. I never actually said it, but a little while ago, and my second girl is due today and basically a full pretzel. So looking like she's tying knots around. So she should be laying anytime. I expect it in the next 2 or 3 days. Except for that, overall, everything's good. Not much is different. It's only been, 3 days since we recorded. So, yeah, no, life is good. Not reptile related. I don't even know if I said it last time, but I bought myself a new toy, which I'm pretty happy. I bought myself a boat, which I haven't had a boat in 3 or 4 years. So I'm pretty excited.
Very nice.
Has absolutely nothing to do with reptiles, but my kids are happy because they've been wanting to go boating again for a long time. And except for that, man, life is good. You got me on a Wednesday night, so let's see how this goes. And I can still give the same excuse. I'm still working tomorrow at 5 a.m., so we're going to try to keep it around 2 hours-ish again.
Sounds good.
If you're good with it.
Yeah.
So let's, how about this? Go on with the sponsor first, and then let's start chatting it up with Nathan.
Sounds good. Reptile Rejects is proudly sponsored by Cornell's World, one of North America's leaders in reptile caging and reptile supplies. You can basically find anything you want on cornellsworld.com, from PVC cages to custom glass terrariums, custom PVC cages, spider robotics technology, your Mist King systems, Arcadia, ZooMed, Exoterra, cleaning supplies, pretty much anything you could need. Order today at cornellsworld.com. Also, check out wcre.ca and pre-order your tickets for upcoming shows and see the vendors lists and sponsors and everything that's coming up. We got the next show is in late June in Medicine Hat, and then we got the big Calgary show in August, which hopefully we get a bunch of people out there like we normally do. It should be a fun time at a really big venue. So the last Calgary show was at a smaller venue, but every August they have a really big one out there. So yeah, no, it'll be great. It'll be a fun time, and if you can make it, you should definitely come out. Alrighty, Dom, do you want to start us off?
Sorry about that. I just read the freaking comments. That was good. All right, we're just going to ignore the comments. Do not read that if you're under the age of 12. Um, Nathan. Where to start? You know what? Let's just start with the very basic. So what do you keep? Are you just an amphibian guy? Do you keep snakes, turtles? Do you keep any monkeys in your backyard? Like, what are you into? I'm going to assume you're purely into amphibians, right? But let's start with the basic, and maybe if you want to talk about your place in the reptile community a bit. But yeah, I'll give the mic to you.
Okay, yeah. Hey, listen, I'm a big animal lover. I do have a few different things. Mainly everything I have is tree frogs of that nature, but I do have a few geckos. I have some cave geckos, cat geckos, and giant day geckos that I have in my collection. Haven't been really doing too much with them as far as trying to get them to breed or anything like that, but I've been because I'm really concentrating on the frog side. But I do have those. Um, when I first started, you talked about my place in the industry here. When I first started, the Inspired Frog, I was actually owned an exotics pet store before this called the Extreme Aquarium here in Sarnia, Ontario, and I started that back in 2016 and closed it just as COVID was hitting. Um, Life kind of exploded at that time for me, and it was just kind of, and then as COVID was hitting, it was time to let it go. I worked full time plus running a full time store on top of that. So when I shut the store down, um, I really didn't want to let go of the hobby. Um, it just the further I got into it, owning the store itself, um, it just hooked me. I didn't want to let go that easy. So I've always had a love of frogs, even as a kid. Like for the first, like, I don't know what years those have been, ages 5 and 6, I guess. We lived out in the country for a little bit. And then we had lots of friends that were farmers out in the country. We camped all the time as kids. That was one of the big things we did as a family growing up is we did a lot of camping. So, between all of those things, I was always running into ponds or hanging out in the ditches somewhere and catching frogs and garter snakes and things like that. So, you know, I started off very young being an animal lover, and I'd hang around the pet stores and play with animals there as a kid. Back in those time frames, like I'm 52 years old, so back then, you had a lot of pet stores and things were a little different back then, so to speak. So, you know, I did my own research when it was time to close the store, wanted to figure the best options for me to fit into continuing what I was doing. And I wanted to start breeding. I had done a few things at the shop, nothing serious by any means, but just wanted to kind of get back to some roots of who I was and decided doing that research of where the holes were in the reptile and amphibian markets that nobody was doing enough on the amphibian side. I knew there was lots of dart frog breeders, and I figured, okay, if I go into that, I'm just going to add just to be another breeder there and fight that a little bit. One of the big things that was missing was anybody breeding tree frogs. So, you'll get a reptile breeder that might have red-eyed tree frogs that they're breeding, or they might have mossy frogs that they're breeding with the rest of their collection, right? So I look at it and really want to be the biggest tree frog breeder in Canada is what I'm heading towards. My collection is a whole bunch of different morphs of white tree frogs. I've got mossy frogs, red-eye tree frogs, Amazon milk frogs. I got the Crassodopa, the fringe leaf frogs. Um, Trying to think what else here. I got some newts, some fire belly toads. Um, some as talked beforehand before we turned on here. I got some albino chubby frogs. So there's different types of species I want to work with on the amphibian side, but the tree frogs are really what I'm going to continue to specialize in. And as things progress, I've had to step back a couple of times as you hit a rough spot, and I've had to sell a couple things off, and then you move forward and gather up some more of the collection again. So um, I'm going to continue to collect, even if I'm not going to be breeding those things right away. Like the fringe leaf frogs, I probably won't breed those until maybe early next year, maybe the spring. Just to, you've only got so much room and so much time. I still work full time, and I just want to continue to offer Canada basically the biggest choice of tree frogs that we can get. As you guys know, it doesn't matter kind of really what species it is, but it doesn't matter if it's a reptile or amphibians. There's really a lot of species that we don't have here in Canada compared to, say, the United States or the UK. So I want at some point to be able to start importing some other species in, whether it be from the US or the UK, and build upon that. That's where my goals are set
Yeah,
at the
for
moment
sure.
with that.
I find it kind of, it's almost funny as like, because we're snake guys. When you
Yeah.
talk about it being a long time, and it's like next year is a long time kind of thing with frogs, because like their
Yep.
reproduction is like, as long as they are adults, like it is fairly, it could be quickly depending on how you cycle them kind of thing, because like
Yep.
us, like some of the snakes we have, it's like, well, you got to wait 6 years, and then maybe
Oh
it's old
boy.
enough, maybe wait
Yep.
8 or 9 years for some other species. Usually it's like 3 to 4 or 5, but yeah, it's just kind of funny the differences in that.
I was gonna
I,
put that comment too in there. It's insane.
yeah.
Like 18 month, I'm like, no pythons ready in 18 month. Okay, maybe ball pythons and stuff you breed fast, but like your Angolans is 6, 7 years. Diamond
Oh
pythons
wow.
is
Yeah.
5, 6 years easily. There's tons that are way longer. Okay,
No
so two
doubt.
quick questions for you. Number one, how many animals do you have, like frogs? And I realize you're probably keeping a lot in cages. And then the number two is, how many crickets do you feed off, or do you have to buy every week or every 2 weeks? I'm just curious, because to me, that's like my big block when it comes to geckos or when it comes to amphibians or anything. Like
Mhm.
the idea of having those stupid freaking yapping or crickety sounds. I don't even know what it is. What sounds do they make? Like what is that called? Like anyway, their noise
Chirp.
drives me freaking insane.
I,
Chirp. There
I,
you go.
yeah, I am not going to try to recreate it for you on this podcast.
I
I'll
think
tell
you
you right
should actually.
now. No, not going to happen. um, so my personal collection is about 65 frogs in my personal collection. That being said, these frogs are explosive, what they call an explosive breeder. They can have up to 1,000 eggs in any one breeding event. So, it's not all the time that we hit that mark. Now, I will say this, and I will bring it, I'll tie this all in together. You talked about having to wait and stuff for the snakes to get old enough. It's one thing this hobby teaches you is a lot of patience. I have zero patience. So this is really, as I've gone through this, it does teach you patience. I'm hitting a spot right now where things just, I took some personal time away from social media from Christmas up until basically I went on to the Frog Rats podcast there. We had a dog pass away over the Christmas holidays, and it really hit hard, and had to kind of really step back from everything a little bit just to focus on the family and whatnot. But so that being said, trying to get back into it, some of the frogs are being rather stubborn right now. And then I went and put another two females and three males. They both laid, and I bet you I probably had 2 or 3 thousand eggs there, and not a single one was fertilized on that bunch. So, you can end up with a lot of frogs and a whole lot of mouths to feed. So, you mentioned about the crickets. Crickets are an interesting thing in the hobby. I see a lot of people that, like yourself, they really don't like crickets. And if you like frogs and you don't like crickets, because I get people in the frog groups and stuff like that complaining they don't want to feed crickets because they're scared of them or they hate them, right? So with the crickets, I order, let's see here, because I supply two or three other people that I know. For my personal amount, I'm going to say I go through about 6,000 crickets a week. Um,
That's
now,
not actually that bad.
yeah, now I am fortunate enough that when I had my shop, I dealt with a supplier, and with that shop being gone, I was able to get grandfathered in and was able to stay as part of their business and still get stuff wholesale from them. So, you're going through a lot of feeders, and as a breeder, your costs are high on your hydro and various other things for upkeep. And I couldn't imagine having to go pay you know $50 or 45 or dollars a box for crickets or whatever everybody's charging for 1,000 crickets these days. But
Actually, BC, well, they just got bought out, so now they're on the same page as
yeah,
every.
I know who. Yeah,
We would get, because I worked at a pet store, we get treasure chest, which I think that was either 1,500 or 25. You could get 1,000 super worms, 1,000 crickets, and like 500 or something
yeah,
kind of thing, and that was 35 bucks. Now that's 70, but like,
yeah.
so yeah, that's not cheap.
It,
Knowing
it
knowing
adds
your
up,
guys' prices now.
absolutely adds up in a hurry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely adds up in a hurry if you don't aren't fortunate enough to have those contacts. And with those amount of frogs, I do have, my own customers that I sell to, but I also have a couple of different stores, a couple of different businesses that I wholesale to as well, which gives me an extra outlet to bring those to a market and send them to somebody else to pass along, right? So, that's the other thing too, I try to express as anybody that's getting into breeding, I'm honest with them and upfront of those things, especially, if you're going to breed, you got to understand if you could easily end up with 1,000 froglets that you have to feed, be responsible for, and then I'll find homes for. My social media presence continues to grow, so and then a couple of different businesses that I wholesale to. I'm not really, not for the word stuck is the wrong word by any means, but they don't sit with me that long that it's not that it's a problem, right? But anybody
Yeah.
that doesn't have these same outlets, are going to have a problem if they're trying to be a new breeder. You really got to figure those things out before you get into it.
So the thing that kind of blows my mind right now is I've got about give or take 60 snakes, give or take. So,
Yeah.
and I'm kind of doing calculations in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're probably thinking what it's costing you, what, maybe $250 a week to feed all your frogs? Let's say
Yeah.
6 boxes, you're probably paying under $50 if you're getting them wholesale. And he's saying that. So whatever, let's say $200, you're getting a good deal. It is actually cheaper for me to feed my snakes than to feed your frogs, which is
Yeah.
kind of mind blowing when you think about it, because you're feeding these tiny little froglets, and
Yeah.
like we're feeding rats, which rats aren't that cheap, but we're not feeding
And
weekly. We're
as
not
often
feeding, well, not even weekly. You're probably feeding every, what, 2 days, every,
as froglets, they're being fed every day. My
yeah. So
adults I'll feed every 3 days, honestly. And but yeah, yeah, they're definitely eating a lot more than what your snakes would for sure.
Have
nice. Okay. Oh, go for it,
Have you
Mike.
thought about breeding your own crickets, or is that something you're like, no? I just remember
Well,
Jay Sommers on the Amphibigas talking about how, uh, what's his name, Sandfire owner that passed away the other year, how he
oh yes,
would
yes,
calculate in
yes.
his head, like, yeah, you need to, like, these froglets are going to eat 5 crickets a day or something, so you need
Mm,
to and we're wholesaling to every pet store in the US, so we need to produce this many, so we have to breed our own because we need to produce like millions of crickets
correct.
kind of thing.
Oh, 100%. Now, if I ever get to a level that in my head that I want to be, um, I would probably start doing that. the amount of work that would go into that, you're going to have multiple bins and lots of food to feed them. Like right now, like my, I'll give carrots and zucchini and apple and stuff to all my crickets. I gut load them all before they go to be fed to the frogs. A lot of the pet stores and stuff sell this cricket feed and cricket drink, they call it, and it's just garbage. So and then people don't understand why they buy 50 crickets from one of the pet stores and they give them that stuff, and by the next day they're all dead again. So going back to what you were saying there, I'm getting a little sidetracked there. Um, I will consider doing that if I ever get this to a level as to where I would expect it to be. But at my size and the amounts that you have to produce and the space that you would need, because you're talking multiple bins and moving them to different sizes as you go to grow out. Right now, I don't think that's feasible for me to do. I get a wholesale price on the boxes, so at this point, I guess I'll stick with what I'm doing. But I think in the future, that's something definitely I would consider.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's definitely something a lot of people don't think about either, right? Like, well, I guys like Dom, who's lucky to have Shan, who breeds his own rats, kind of thing, and they're like he's lucky there, but like when like guys also talk about that with the snake hobby, right? When you get over a certain amount, like you either need to breed your own rats or suck up the big feeder bill, kind of thing.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, like there was years where I had to buy my own, and I'd estimate that it probably would cost me around $4,500 of food a year to feed everything,
Wow.
and
Hmm.
like it adds up because there's certain time of the years you feed like crazy, certain time of the years you don't, and like pinky rats are insane now. They're like a buck or two a head, but when you have 150 babies and you're feeding a
Yep.
buck 50 feeding every 5 or 6 days at first, and yeah, it
Yeah,
really
most
does
definitely.
build up. See, to me with crickets, it's not the fear. The crickets never bothered me. I'd worked with them and all that, but man,
Yep.
you cannot. There's no way to handle crickets, to move them, to put them in bins, to feed them off without having a few escaping all the time. It is literally
Absolutely.
impossible. I don't care what
Not you're
people say.
not.
Like, so if you're a guy and you're trying to convince your girlfriend to bring an animal that eats crickets in your house, stop
uh,
lying to her. If she's
yep.
listening, it will eventually get out. It will chirp for a couple of weeks in your house. You will never find it until
Yep.
it eventually dies. Like, I don't care.
You know,
To me, that's my issue.
yeah, yeah, and you know what? And you're 100% right. I laugh because this is so funny. Like, as I said, I deal with thousands of crickets a week, and they do escape, and it drives my wife bonkers. I'm lucky I'm not kicked out of here. I'll tell you right now. It drives her nuts. We live in a 2.5 story home, and we've had them on our top floor in the bathroom, and because they'll travel around, and she's like, "How do these get here? What are you doing?" So I'm constantly. We have an attached house or garage to the house as well, and we'll sit at the back door and have a quick smoke, and one goes across the floor, and she's, "You better go catch that." So here I am chasing around crickets. So there's my little story about crickets for you.
That's funny. Is there any
Crickets,
other?
5 cents, man. Catch it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any other feeders that you're regularly feeding to your frogs? Like do you do like earthworms or black soldier flies or anything like that?
The black soldier flies, I will actually, their larvae I will dump into their enclosures and let them go into the leaf litter. I don't feed any of the black soldier fly larvae to the froglets because they can't digest them. White tree frog, a froglet cannot digest the larva. When they go to the bathroom, you'll see the whole larva out the other end. So what I'll do is I'll order them and I'll really and order a couple hundred larvae, and each terrarium will get some under their leaf litter in the adults enclosures and let them hatch, and then they'll chase them down, and I just add to their meal that way. Every once in a while, I'll give them a treat with silkworms. Um, but the definitely gut-loaded healthy crickets is my main diet, especially for them for being such a large group that I do have. But between the two, between the black soldier fly larvae and the gut-loaded crickets, man, and they get a good healthy meal for sure. That just caught me off guard.
I think he's just gonna do that every show.
It's
Right on.
it's going to be a
That's awesome.
trend. Um, so, do you mind if we go back to like just the really basic with amphibians? So, my understanding is that they obviously change from certain phases as they grow up, right? But I also understand that some of them don't, right? Some of them they obviously, most of them lay in water, which I think all of them lay in water, I want to say, but there might be exceptions like every rule. Then then can you explain the process for amphibians and what makes a tree frog? So if tree frogs are your passion, what's the difference to a tree frog and you know, I don't know. Let's go with a toad, or let's go with a anything else. Kind of like go through the basics, and then we can. I'd love to get into the breeding, because it's the breeding, the selling, the financial aspect is what really intrigues me too. Because having 3,000 froglets blows my mind, and if it's worth $20 in the end, I'm not sure you make money in the end if you got to feed it for 3-4 months. So
Mhm.
let's start with the like that part, and then we can go from there.
Okay, well, I'll tell you right now, yeah, it's definitely not something I'm getting rich off of by any means, especially some of the lower, like the normal morphs of, say, the white tree frogs, um, and different lower species. Now, I have some higher morphs and some more expensive frogs that I will be breeding that will pull me into another. I'm hoping to bring me into a higher level so I can continue to grow the business of what I'm hoping to create and do. Now you mentioned about the eggs themselves. I'll just touch base with that real quick. White tree frogs, for example, will breed and lay right in the water. Same with Amazon Malott frogs. Then you got your red-eye tree frogs. They lay on the leaves or anything above the water. So and then they will hatch and then drop down into the water and continue. Now, as far as breeding goes, prepping, some of them are a little different than others. Some are, a slight temperature drop. Some are more of a temperature drop than others, and taking complete humidity away. Get those cooler temperatures kind of prepares them kind of in a winter mode. Everything slows down. You feed them less, and then you do that for about 6 weeks. Warm them back up. You're feeding heavier. When it's closer to being time, I increase the humidity, and then we get them. Then they will start showing signs of eggs. So then you bring them over to what we call a rain chamber, and that's a separate terrarium with a water bottom, and it's got a pump that goes up into a tube and up into a rain bar on the top of the terrarium, and that mimics your rain, and that's what's going to kickstart the breeding process. The males will start calling, get all excited. They perform amplexus, which is their process of the frogs breeding. They'll lock up, and that's what the amplexus is. And with all goes right, depending on the species, sometimes you'll also get them within 24 hours. Sometimes I've got to push them up to a week to get them to lay. Now, during that process, I keep a very close eye on them, especially frogs such as the white tree frogs. They're actually a low humidity frog. A lot of people mistake amphibians as being high humidity, hanging around the water all the time. A tree frog actually lives up in the canopy of trees. And depending on the species, like you got your Amazon melt frogs, they love humidity. So where the areas they come from, you get higher humidity. But the white tree frogs, we're keeping those in a glass box, and the higher humidity affects them in those boxes. And the number one cause of death in this hobby with white tree frogs is keeping the humidity too high. and they get a bacterial infection. And if it's not treated right away, um, they will get sick or sicker and pass away. So when I have them in the rain chamber, I keep a very close eye on them for those things. Make sure there's no dangers. If I see like the bacterial infections on one frog, it gets pulled out and it gets put back into the terrarium back under the heat lamp, and that pulls the infection back away from them again. I've had two or three males try to mount one female, and essentially what they could do is make her drown. So I keep an eye on all these things because I just certainly don't want to lose any of my frogs during any of these processes. So if I've seen any of that, and it has happened, I pull them apart, and if they continue, I'll take one of the males out that's causing the most trouble and send him back to the terrarium and start the process all over again. Um, White tree frogs
So
within a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, I'm going to start having tadpoles, and then the process continues from there.
let's stop you before you go into the tadpole section. But first of all, so you're not keeping them, you're not cohabbing them, right? You're keeping males and females separately until you
No,
bring them into the rain chamber. Is that what I'm understanding?
no, I keep all of in the terrariums in their permanent terrariums. I keep them
Yeah.
in groups, and I do have males and females together. They don't breed in a terrarium setting.
Okay.
They do have to have that rain chamber process that I just explained in order to
Okay.
have eggs brought forth to us. So,
And are most frogs sexually dimorphic? Is that how you're telling them apart?
well, there's some frogs that you will have a hard time telling what they are. The mossy frogs are a big example of that. They are almost next to impossible to tell what gender is from one frog to the next. Now, white tree frogs, we'll go back to that. Um, an adult male will have a black throat, and a female will have a white throat. Most of the time, females are larger than males. Males in the white tree frogs are only the ones that croak as well. So there's an easier time telling in certain species, and some have multiple tells, while some have almost nothing that you could tell as to what they are. Red-eyed tree frogs, generally it's the size. Males are much smaller than females as adults, so that's kind of your true tell there. Um, Melt frogs, they call a lot, so you could definitely tell by their both. They got two milk sacs, one on either side, and when they're calling, you'll know it. They sound like somebody's strangling a goose. So that's their tell on that.
So the just back on the mossies. So you can't tell them if they're calling, or is that the only way?
Uh,
Because I've heard some
um,
stories of people bringing home one, and then it's like, yeah, no, that has to go back. It is way too loud.
the mossy frogs aren't that bad as far as their call goes. It's more of a softer hoot. Whereas the white tree frogs, they are loud. I can be in my backyard and hear them croaking in the house.
Oh
So
yeah.
I've had my neighbors ask me about them. But so there is a difference in subspecies. Red-eyed tree frogs are another one, more of a softer call. Milk frogs also extremely loud. So a lot of things can be different from one species to the next. Higher humidity for one, lower humidity for the other. Different types of calls, different other ways that are easier to tell the sex from one to the other. And as I explained there, so there's a wide range of care from some of them as well. And it's just that there are a bunch of different interesting species that it's just not one size fits all for the whole group. So yeah, I spend a lot of time doing this. I work full time. I come home, eat supper, and then life becomes about the frogs for that time frame while I'm home. And then between dealing with the frogs and shipping and stuff like that, because we do a lot of shipping. And yeah,
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's it's definitely cool to hear. Like as like I think we all kind of have a feeling that every frog's different, but it's cool to hear you kind of
Mhm.
give analogies into how they're kind of similar and not similar at the same
Yeah.
time. Have you worked with bird poop frogs at all?
I had some brought in, and I have a big regret of that. So I brought some in to sell from my supplier um, to see what the market at the time was. This is when I first started. So this is going back. I think I'm in my 6th year now with the Inspired Frog. When I first started, I was bringing a few different species in on top of my own stuff just to have a variety of stuff to sell. And I brought a group in to sell and was gonna next order. I was gonna bring some in for myself, and they didn't have any more, and I haven't seen any since. I should have kept the group that I had brought in instead of selling it off. So
I
that's one species that's
I do.
I need to find.
I actually kept and bred them for like a year or so, and then I was like, yeah, do I
Oh wow,
want to
really?
keep doing this? Like, because I just kept them in like an exoterra with like that much water
Yep.
and a bunch of cork
Hmm.
rounds because they would just lay eggs on the cork, and then the tadpoles just
Yep.
drop in, kind of thing.
Yep.
Those are fun, and they like their call wasn't super annoying. It was kind of nice. It was like a not too like it was like you could go to bed and like hear it kind of quietly in the distance,
Yeah,
and
it's
it
calming.
wasn't too bad.
Yeah, it's a little more calming. It's not invasive as much as say the white tree frogs can be. I'll tell you,
Yeah, for
they can
sure.
be loud when they get going. But yeah, the bird poop frogs was something that I'm gonna continue to look for, and I will bring here at the Inspired Frog to have part of our breeding program once I find them again. But I just don't see them available anywhere.
I would
It's like nobody's got them
hit
anymore.
up Renee and Justin at mostly Just Geckos. They should have. I know
Okay.
they have a group because I got them from them, bred them, and then I just sold them back to them because they're like, well, we could use some more.
Okay. Well, I'll have to reach out to Justin.
Yeah,
I haven't talked to him in a while, anyways. So
yeah, no,
I'll reach out to him and see what he's got going on.
it'd be funny to get them on, but I don't think they would do it because Justin and
Cool.
Renee they both bred like quite a few different species over the years.
Yep.
Which, like they did the Borneo
100%.
earless
Yep.
frogs. Yeah, that was kind of neat.
Yep.
Like a bubble nester
Yeah,
kind of
those are
thing.
cool frogs. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, they look like nice, beautiful chunks of wood with all the different grains all over their skin.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, those are fascinating. Have you had it run into any issues with the mossy frogs? Because I know not issues, but like finding females. Because that's what I've mainly heard is that most of them come in as males, or is that just people not knowing how to
Yep.
sex them?
No, it is true. They're a very, very male-heavy species. Their females are very hard to find. I have found one. I've seen some amplexus happening, but I've had no luck so far with them, and I've got a group of 7. So with one female, and again, I've not had much luck. They're difficult. Now, with that being said, I there is stories going around, and some people will say it's not true, and others swear by it. That if you breed and raise the tadpoles in cooler water, that it actually gives you more females as they're morphing out. Some will be more females to go with the males, but I don't know how true that is yet.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. I think I saw that somewhere too, where it was like if you do it at like I think it was like really low, like in the 50s, like almost like colubrid brumation temps. Because I know the bird poops, like
Yep.
they did fine at like high 60s to low 70s, mid 70s. They were good in
Hmm.
breeding and all those kind of temperatures, kind of things. So like I'm not totally
Yep.
surprised, but it just kind of seems odd for an amphibian to be almost like a tortoise, right? Like tortoises and leopard geckos are known for being more sex determinant, like with lower being one
Hmm.
sex and higher being the other, and kind of in the middle to get both. But yeah, no, that's kind of
Yep.
interesting for sure.
Well, it's kind of like the oxalotl, right? They thrive in much cooler water, generally more so than what most hobbyists can actually provide for them to have to be super healthy and thrive for a long term period. But yeah, like the mossy frogs, for instance, they do appreciate cooler temperatures. Like anything above 80 degrees actually can be quite fatal for them, for a mossy frog. So they really need to be kept in a lower temperature environment for sure
Yeah, which on
compared to
So
a lot of other
you
species.
go down.
all right, I was gonna say, so if I could take you guys back just maybe a step back. So you're talking about incubating or temperature sex determinant, which I gather is not really a thing, or it's not really been proven to work or such. But now, when you're talking about incubating or things like that, are you talking about like when the eggs get deposited in the water, the temperature of the water you're putting them in? Or are you talking about the temperature of the air for, let's say, red-eyed tree frogs in the leaves? Like what is the temperature where or is it the eggs when they're inside the female? You're keeping the female at a certain temperature.
When you're talking about sex determination, there it's actually the eggs in the water after they hatch and they're raised in that water temperature. That's where I'm being told
The sex is
that
determined.
the sex is determined. So if it's kept at a cooler temperature and it's quite low, it's below 60, around that mark, that to have that better ratio of male to female. Now, again, I've not personally experienced it yet, so I just don't want to go out there and say, hey, that's the way it is because somebody told me that or whatever, right? So I do like to do my own research and have my own experiences with those processes before I say that's what it is. I've Most people in the mossy frog groups will tell you that's what it is, and then you'll get the odd person that will try to tell you that's not true. But you do listen to a lot of the other more experienced people, and they are claiming this is what it is. So that's something I hope to be able to experiment with as well once I can get my mossy frog group going properly. I'd like to try to hunt down a couple more females, but I'm never the only one that's looking for them. So, with Canada being such a small amphibian hobby, there's just not that many of them here. So, I don't know if I'm going to have to eventually talk somebody into the United States or Canada to see if anybody's got females for me to import over just to continue to bring this out, right? Just because there's just not enough people breeding them. There's not many females, and you get there's just a couple of breeders around that are doing it that are putting the same frogs through, right? So I just like to be able to add some new blood and continue to keep making sure that particular species sticks around in our hobby here.
Yeah, for sure. With the actually, I guess I've never thought about it, but it's kind of like now that you think about it, like because I've seen mossies for sale for
Mm.
years, right? And now it
Yeah.
makes me wonder where they're coming from because I almost want to think that they're captive bred because they look big and healthy, but
Yeah.
are they actually just coming wild caught?
Well, from my supplier, I haven't seen because they have a list that I get sent to me, and there's wild caught stuff on there that they import through. And I haven't seen any mossy frogs that are wild caught on that list. I haven't seen any mossy frogs period on their list in some time, but I haven't seen any wild caught mossy frogs. I don't think ever on that list, or if it has, it's been a long time. Um, but yeah, that's kind of a lot of the reason why I'm enjoying this breeding process is there has been so many things that have brought into the country that are wild caught, and it's not good for the hobby. It's not good for the animal itself. It's not good for the environment. You see some of the diseases that are being brought in on frogs right now, and Josh's frogs in the U.S. got hit pretty hard there over a year ago, and I will give them props. So it certainly wasn't their fault, but they got something from somebody that brought a big killer disease in there,
Say
but they were on top of it right
Chytrid or
away.
B cell?
Kitrid, that's it. Thank you. I'm horrible with names, so it's Kitrid. Yes, absolutely. And they caught it and they treated it, and they had let everybody know right away this is what they were dealing with, and they actually brought all kinds of people in to get this taken care of. And so I will say that Joshua and his crew over there were stepped right up to their game there and took care of it. But this is part of the problem is bringing wild caught stuff over because you just don't know what you're bringing with it. And and if you're not quarantining any of this, you should be even quarantining somebody else's captive bred stuff when you're bringing it home, regardless of what type of animal it is, whether it be a frog or a snake or a gecko. I would be setting that off somewhere and putting it through that process. But you know, the wild caught game, they've brought so many cheap animals in, and they just get dumped into the market, and it just dumbed our hobby down so much. And you see why our hobby gets attacked so much from some of these outside sources of the way these animals get treated. So me doing what I'm doing, I want to continue to offer as many captive bred animals that I can. And I won't say that I wouldn't bring in a wild caught animal in order so I could continue to offer um, captive bred animals from that as well. That's a can be a bonus depending on the species and stuff that you're working with.
Yeah, for sure. I see more. Well, actually, back on the quarantine stuff, like I feel like the snake part of the hobby, or at least I guess like the breeders, not to sound elitist, I guess like on like me and Dom and like us kind of thing, and people that honestly like watch the podcast and stuff because there's a lot of kind of out in the open. Like there's several viruses and diseases that different groups of snakes have to deal with, like nidovirus. Probably every snake has some sort of nidovirus kind of thing, and then like there's what is it? The colubrid one where they I'm thinking Kitrid's stuck in my head, but it's a C as well. Uh, crypto, Cryptosporidium, and
Okay.
but that's also in leopard geckos and monitor lizards because there's a bunch of different strains there, and then you got paramyxovirus and tons of other stuff.
Boa's
Oh yeah,
sun gazing, isn't there?
yeah, that was
Something like that.
I
Yeah.
think that's
Okay.
paramyxo.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, no, there's a bunch of
I mean,
lethal.
you learn the problem that's in your hobby, right? You learn what it is. Unless you're a specific person and you buy chondros and you're like, oh my god, I didn't even know NIDA was a thing, but that's something else.
Right.
That's a side joke for everybody who understands that.
Yeah. I watched every single podcast on a network that says Nido everywhere. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's something that I think I guess the same people that would buy wild caught as a pet would be the same people to not know that quarantine is actually something like, even if you only have five
Correct.
animals, you should still keep that new one for, honestly, some people like guys who do tree boas, like especially with the emeralds, they're quarantining those things for like a year, maybe even 2 years away from their
Yeah.
collection kind
Yeah.
of thing because it's so risky with some species with certain
Mhm.
risks they have. But yeah, no, and then with the wild caught, I almost feel that people should be bringing in wild caught to add to their breeding projects. It shouldn't be for the pet trade. It should be like, yeah, we could bring in
Correct.
20 and this guy gets 10 and this
Mhm.
guy gets 10, or you bring 20 in just to establish a colony of knowing that you're probably going to lose a couple, but you're doing it to establish captive bred animals that can then be
Mhm.
sold to beginners, and that'll be way hardier
Uh,
too and do better for
yeah.
keepers, right?
Well, and I agree with that 100%. Like, when these wholesalers are bringing in wild caught stuff, doesn't matter if it's snakes or geckos or frogs, you know, those animals being in the wild by nature are going to have parasites. And those animals come in super stressed from those environments, being flown over from the countries that they are, land at the wholesaler and already super stressed. Then they go to from the supplier to the pet store, and they go to and most pet stores. Not going to say all. There's some good ones out there, but if they end up a big box store where an employee absolutely knows nothing about anything, they're just trained by the market. They're training officers there that tell them this is what you're going to tell people, and then they end up at their home, and in 6 weeks they're dead because they were full of parasites to begin with. they did not know how to properly treat them, and they're already stressed, and then they're gone. So, in order to further any species, especially if they're not already being captive bred, I agree with what you said 100%. They need to change the way things are done a little bit. And if it's going to be brought in from another country, it needs to be brought in as groups and being set off to breeders. There is animals right now that are, you know, on the endangered species list that actually could be saved, I believe. This is a whole new topic on top of that I'm going to spin off into a little bit. But I believe some of these species can actually be saved by pulling them off and getting them into a captive breeding environment, whether it be bringing them in groups and bringing them to certain breeders. There's actually where a company called Wakiri that bring in their own wild caught stuff from where they're at. The fringe leaf frog is one of them, and they will sell them out as captive bred from their own program, so that the poachers aren't going in there and just wiping them all out. Because as we all know, that's happening quite frequently, even in the States and in Canada. We've seen people being charged for smuggling stuff through. But losing my own train of thought here. But us breeders can actually be quite helpful for that. Doesn't matter if it's a lizard or a snake or a frog. You know, I really think instead of leaving them to their own environment to continue going downhill with, and then be gone, that these breeding programs need to start happening. The axolotl is um, is a perfect example as to their survivability from being brought out of their environment. And then now there's so many of them. There's hardly any of them left in the wild. They're basically extinct in the lake that they come from in Mexico. But years ago they were brought in for scientific purposes. Various their limbs and stuff grow back after they've been removed. But now they're in the pet trade and they're alive and healthy. So if they become completely extinct where their natural environment is in Mexico, they still exist. And I think we can use that as a bit of an example to a degree where we could start saving some species instead of looking down on the pet trade. If we change the way things are done a little bit, we can actually be a better help to our environment and to some of those species that we're actually losing. So I really think that's something that some of these governments really need to study, instead of just trying to wipe out the pet trade completely.
Yeah.
Because it's not just poaching that's the problem, right? It goes back to pollution, the rainforest being removed, their environments being destroyed, and that's where a lot of in the reptile and amphibian world, a lot of that is disappearing to those environments and not really poaching, I would say, as much.
Yeah, but there's a part of me that, number one, let's say the researchers near the lake that's a problem build a building and then took out 80 adults. I mean, if you're looking at 2,000, 3,000, 1,000 babies, each of them having, I mean, I feel like it'd be really easy to repopulate the entire area, no? Or
it depends.
If they raise,
like, what is it? The Panamanian golden frog is another, that Atelopus species down in Panama I think it's wiped out now. I could be wrong, but I feel like that was one that definitely, because of chytrid, it like basically went extinct. And now every zoo and aquarium has a group of them. Like, I think I knew one of the guys I worked at the Vancouver aquarium, and he's like, yeah, we stopped breeding these because they breed so easily. Same with the Lake Titicaca frogs. Like, every zoo and aquarium has like a whole group of them because they're so easy to breed, kind of thing. But now it'd be getting to the point of, like Nathan's saying, where we can do it for species that maybe are even more eligible to be like re-released, kind of thing, or like stuff that's we could actually save for species that could have like a large enough plot of land saved that they could actually be reintroduced and they would actually survive, instead of species where cause some species like we were talking to Anthony Pierleone the other week on McCordy, the McCord's box turtle out there in Southeast Asia, where they only exist in captivity now because it's all farmland in Vietnam or Indonesia, wherever they're from, kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so it's tough. But yeah, no, it would be really cool to start doing that. I believe there are some programs that have contributed to being released. I just now it's like skipping my mind on the species that is
Yeah.
actually
Well,
happening to.
okay. Well, I'm sure there's going to be a few different programs for the release of them. And, you're going back to the oxalotl, like the lake that they come from is absolutely polluted. If you were to try to reduce them in that particular lake until that environment changes or something, that their government needs to do to clean up that area, at least the species still exists. Over the decades, the centuries and the decades, and especially the last few, we've lost so many different animals to, either poaching or pollution or sickard. There's just so many variables that we've lost animals to. We're dealing with something here in Ontario right now that the Ford government has just basically thrown out. The I'm gonna make a fool of myself here for a minute because I'm been a long day. Um, they're taking away some of the protections to the Endangered Species Act. They're basically taking that and changing the act so that they can start developing easier um, properties, so they can start building businesses and housing and pipelines and stuff without having to go through the channels that they're going through for the environmental factors right now. There's going to be a lot of animals, a lot of different reptiles and newts and fish species and bird species that rely on these habitats. Turtles, turtles are there's a different endangered turtles here in Ontario, and the Ford government is basically gutting that Endangered Species Act now, and so they can make it, and they're changing it and calling it a different name. But now, when they're going and building on something or taking a marshland out to turn into profitable land in their eyes, that they don't have to go through the same hoops, and they can have their Build Better Ontario Act going, right? So, you know, there's just so many factors that can help, as us all being part of the hobby, to make things better for that and for the species that we keep or will continue hopefully in the future.
Mike, are you lip singing or here? Are you? I'm not quite sure what you're doing, but
There we go.
there's
Yeah,
We
there we
lost you.
go.
We lost you.
I had
lips
to.
moving, but just no
I
sound.
forgot to unmute myself.
Yeah, it was a good video though.
I was saying I feel like everybody should have that at least one species in their collection that they keep just for like maybe the sake of the hobby kind of thing. If you want to say it like that, because like it's really unlikely that like there's people like Anthony in the turtle world that are actually like they're part of the, as he would call it, the what is it, the passion or the discipline, as Zach Loftman talks about. Like that part of the discipline of reptile keeping, the turtle guys are actually connected in with the zoos and in with the conservation. So they actually have like zoo animals on loan kind of thing to breed, and
Okay.
like spider tortoises and different like Cora species and stuff like that. So he's actually is able to do that while the rest of the kind of herpetoculture is kind of seen like zoos don't really want to touch you kind of thing. And I think Canada, it's even harder than the US, because the US, you can get zoo animals and you can sell to zoos. You just have to follow AZA requirements. You have to get a site check, vet checks, but it's doable. Like you just have to basically fill out the
Yeah.
paperwork and be a good
Mm-hmm.
keeper kind of thing. And it's actually not the
Right.
end of the world. It just takes a lot. I think I remember there was a monitor breeder that sold to Virginia Zoo or something where Dennis McNamara works, and he was like, "Yeah, that was the
Mm-hmm.
toughest sale I ever did."
Oh, right on.
But yeah, no, it's kind of it's weird seeing, like, I know I'm pretty sure listening to Amphibicast since Dan kind of started that.
Yeah,
He's definitely had lots of guys on that I think are maybe in between. Like some of them are more conservation, while others are fully captive. And then you get like the Wakiri. That's super cool, right? Like that's what Australia should be doing. Where no, you
100%.
can buy these animals that are captive bred, and the money goes back into conservation, kind of thing. But
Hmm.
obviously, Australia doesn't want to say that they've actually allowed stuff out in the past, but that's a whole nother issue.
Yeah, and that's a shame that we're treating the hobby is being treated like this. We're being treated, by the governments and the anti-pet people very horribly, and I'm not going to say it's all on them. I think as hobbyists in general and keepers in general, breeders, we do need to do better in some areas. You do have your bad actors out there that are doing the smuggling or carrying sick animals, and those are the things that those types of people certainly jump on and make our hobby look bad. And the more of us that can be, stewards to the hobby and continue to promote better keeping and just be there for people. Like I make myself available for all of my customers and people that are even not. I have people in the U.S., the U.K., and even a gentleman in Iran that contact me for help, for information with, any issues that might arise and stuff like that. And I'm not doing that for myself or anything like that. And I just want to be part of the hobby, and I want to see things grow and get better and continue to thrive. But we do have a few bad actors. We've got the government fighting against us, and those anti-pet groups that continue to take the little bits and pieces of the bad and make it seem like that's what the whole hobby is. So if we can continue to put our best foot forward, regardless of what we're keeping, you guys, being a snake breeder or me being a frog breeder, that all ties into the same group of people, the same market. I think that anybody that has a reptile room is missing out if they're not having frogs. So I always push that too. I just think it all goes together. And if you're just keeping frogs, well, you should have some other things in that room too, because it is such a wide, big, fantastic hobby that if you're just going to stick with one thing, you're missing out on a whole lot.
Yeah,
I had my pet store there. I was more of a fish guy before I got into the reptile side. I actually opened the store as a freshwater and saltwater store. So I was really into saltwater fish and freshwater fish, all the coral and all that stuff, right? And then quickly realized that hey, I needed to pivot a little bit and started bringing some. And like I said, I've had stuff in the past, but I was a little more blinded to what my market could have carried at the time. So I quickly pivoted and brought in reptiles, and I even sold ferrets at the store. I've always wanted a ferret as a kid, so I started selling ferrets, and I kept one. So yeah, I really got the feel of a lot of different species of owning that store, and a lot of appreciation, more so than I already had for animals, by being able to continue to educate myself and any animal that I brought into that store, like I deep dove in all the information I could, educated myself, and passed that on to all my customers. It was just so much fun to do, and to be part of the hobby is just amazing. We've got a lot of good groups of people out there that we could certainly continue to thrive with.
yeah, for sure. I'm thinking maybe we can pivot off this because I love this talk. I love talking about kind of how the hobby should be, and I always love talking about that. I feel like when we had Philip Leitz on from Nerds Only, and like that show was just like philosophy for like 2 hours on reptile keeping because that's just actually Jay in the comments or Cloaca Jane. She got me the Paul Shepard books that he recommended. It kind of helps you like think about it, like evolution, where even humans kind of sit in the whole universe kind of thing. So I can't wait to do that. Although, actually, so I forgot to mention, I did get my new books in. I got the Craig Trumbauer's Pine Snake book, The Complete Pituophis, and then I also got Anthony's Turtle Preservation. Kind of, it's like a Bible on keeping like the most common species of turtle, like the top like 30 or 40 kind of thing. So it has like all like the rare ones and some kind of. So I can't wait to deep dive into that as well. But yeah, no, that's a sidetrack again. But,
Yeah, it's
So
easy to. For me, it's easy to do.
So I'll go on some of your comments. Something's been going on around here. So on Facebook, there's like lost animals ads and shit like that, right? Usually it's I lost my dog, I lost my cat, and all
Yeah.
that. And about 3 days ago in Ottawa, somebody posted I lost my snake. Um, my little boop was being suntanned outside for her walk, and she got out and blah blah blah. And if you look on it's like everything that I stand against. Like, I'm sorry, you shouldn't take your snake for a walk or go suntanning outside for its
Mm.
daily UV for 5 hours. It's a ball python. If it escaped, were you looking at it? Was it in a cage outside? It was just out there. And anyway, the whole point is though that when you look at comments on a post like that, it's insane. Like something that's going to be there for a day will have 500 comments, as many negative of like kill it if you see it to oh my god, poor little thing, I hope you find it, right? Um,
Mm.
and I don't know, to me, when people do those kind of things, it's destroying everybody else who keeps their animal properly, right?
Yep.
And I don't know why I'm bringing that up. You were talking about something along those lines, and
Correct.
I
Yep.
don't know. To me, I decided not to reply because I had absolutely nothing positive to say.
Mm.
But it irks me, man. It irks me when people destroy the side of like my side of the passion. You know what I mean? Like,
Correct.
so I could see somebody doing it the same for that. Walking my snake and
Well,
taking it to Petco is a God given right. Jesus Christ.
yeah.
Okay, you know what? Ban her. Ban her.
Right. And that's ridiculous. And we have to be, if we're going to continue to have this hobby, we have to be stewards of it. We have
So,
to protect it. We can't be doing stuff like that. I agree 100%. That person doesn't deserve to have any animals at all if they took so little responsibility for that snake and allowed it. And I'm going to say allowed it because that's what they did. They allowed it to get away and escape. It doesn't matter if it was an accident. That accident should never have happened. They did something totally off the wall that allowed that snake to escape. And we see those things. I just saw another post somewhere else too. Somebody's python got out. I don't remember where I saw it. Just yesterday I saw something too. And I think it was down in the States that somebody's snake got out as well. There's no need for that. Zero. If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing within the hobby and looking after your animals, you obviously don't care enough about it to have it.
exactly, and that goes the same for the dumb free handling venomous guys down in the States that are like, oh, this doesn't affect anything. It's like, well, you have a bunch of laws now that are because of this, and it doesn't
Yeah.
help even to general keepers. I know it's HOTS, but like it's like it doesn't matter. It's still a reptile, and when you
Yeah.
not
Well, when
every
that,
death gets publicized either, so like that's kind of good in that way. But like
yeah,
when it
but
makes
it's his
bad
example
publicity,
there
it's
where
not good.
yeah. Well, that's what I was just going to say. That with that point there, where he was saying that snake escaped. Now the government is on this. People from the town or the city, your different levels are seeing this, and that's what starts the ball rolling of a city banning outright all kinds of different species of all the different things that you and I were talking about before we came online. Um, we're going to continue to lose species. You're going to end up with bearded dragons, leopard geckos, and corn snakes is all you're going to be allowed to keep because that's what people are not going to be scared of. Ball pythons are so safe to keep, but the word python scares people. So as soon as they see the word python escaped, even though it was a ball python,
Yeah.
people panic and they freak out.
Yeah, I think there's some.
And
Oh yeah, like
those bans will
Corpus
continue.
Christi, Texas. They can't keep any boas or pythons because one spot in
Wow.
the town stays warmer than 32 degrees Fahrenheit, which is like it is a warm place, but like it's just dumb kind of thing. It's like it's
Yeah.
yeah. Maybe we want to pivot on to maybe some general like care
Sure.
on some frogs, and then later I want to maybe ask about some other like kind of common species that we've always seen in pet stores, but that honestly I think are
Hmm.
kind of cool and and stuff. But
Yep.
maybe let's first hit on some like if somebody buys a white tree frog from you or maybe from one of the sellers that you sell to, how should they set
Mhm.
it up kind of thing? What how would you suggest that they keep the animal to kind of grow it out and then eventually into adulthood?
The biggest thing that I'm going to say is it depends on how you plan on keeping it. Like for beginners that nobody really understands the basics, I'm going to say that paper towel might be the best way to start off with for two or three frogs in an 18 by 18 by 24 inch terrarium. Lots of branches and ledges because it's a tree frog and they need those branches and ledges to get around with and feel safe. Um, I've seen in many of the white tree frog groups and with beginners that they will have, in an 18 by 18 by 24, you'll see branches this big laying in the corner and tiny little plants all sitting in the bottom. Um, it definitely does pay to do your research on that. But when you're doing setting up, I certainly recommend going if you're going to do say two frogs, just go ahead and do the full size 18 by 18 by 24. You're going to need a basking lamp and the T5 UVB bulbs um, that stretch right across instead of the coils. The coils actually do not really give off as much UVB as we think they do. So they're not really the greatest for any of our animals in general. So I certainly don't recommend that particular style bulb. Branches and different plants, especially if you're going to be setting up as bioactive, the branches, ledges, and plants actually increase. Also, on top of that, the usable space inside that terrarium. Like I said, going back to these other guys that have set up these little branches and plants, you've got so little usable space there and all that dead space in the center of that terrarium that's not being used. White tree frogs are also, as adults, they're actually a low humidity frog. So I actually keep mine at 40 or 45%. Um, I have recently seen in some of the groups that I'm going to disagree with. I haven't done it publicly in the groups because I'm seeing more and more people promoting it, and I don't understand where it's coming from all of a sudden. But some of these people are actually promoting that white tree frogs should be kept at 30% and 30% humidity, and that is extremely low. I keep mine on average of 40 to 45%. You do get certain humidity spikes in there when you're bioactive, you're watering plants, that sort of thing. Um, with the paper towel, you're going to change that out every 2 or 3 days. Certainly a clean water dish that needs to be changed daily for them to soak in. Frogs in general, they're not like other reptiles where they're drinking the water out of the bowl. They actually absorb the water through their skin. So you're definitely going to want to keep that water bowl clean because they do use that bowl as a bathroom. So, if you've got high ammonia and nitrates built up in that bowl, you are going to have your frog absorb that, cause bacterial infections, and in general have a very sick frog that's not going to last very long at all. Proper lighting, the heat bulb, you're going to want to keep in the basking area of, I promote 85 to 90% in the basking area, and the rest can just be the gradient down from into your room temperature. Um, I've had several people contact me about having Miss Kings and stuff set up, and you certainly don't want that. I may mist my frogs down, my white tree frogs down once a week if I'm lucky, and it'll just be a light mist. It's certainly not daily. White tree frogs being a low humidity frog, they actually are susceptible to bacterial infections due to that high humidity. Um, so we try to keep that down. There's ways of reversing it, but we can talk about that later. Um, and then you go to a bioactive terrarium. You're gonna want a little bit of a drainage layer just in case, the frogs do cause, as they're jumping in and out of their bowls, they do cause water to come out of that bowl and can drench the soil. So I do still recommend that you have a drainage layer, and then you're gonna have your soil, and then you have your various heavy-bodied plants. I use various heavy-bodied philodendron plants for those particular terrariums. You get anything too delicate, they'll crush it. And same thing with the bioactive. You're going to have lots of branches and ledges to increase their square footage inside the terrarium, some places to climb. On top of the soil, I also have a good thick layer of leaf litter over top. Any soil that gets onto the frog is actually also not very good for them as well. That can cause bacterial infections. They absorb again what they do through their skin. And so we put that deep layer of leaf litter. It could be dried oak leaves, dried magnolia leaves. I actually collect my own leaf litter. My neighbor's got a massive oak tree at the end of my property, so every year I collect. Every fall I'll collect multiple bags of oak leaves just for my own terrariums directly. Um, and then you're going back to part of your cleanup crew um, for the terrarium as well for bioactive isopods and springtails. They're your cleanup crew. They're going to take care of dead crickets, poop, that sort of thing through the terrarium as part of a beneficial environment for your animal to thrive off of while it's in that terrarium. Now, that being said, um, there is some misguidance on the fact that once you set up a bioactive terrarium, that it's completely hands free after that. That you don't have to do that. It's no longer any maintenance required. Well, that's totally not true. You still got the glass to clean. You're going to have to spot clean. There's got to be times where you might end up having waterlogged soil that you got to deal with and replace your cleanup crew if it's passed on. Um, so, there's still areas there that need to be paid attention to on maintenance and whatnot with a bioactive terrarium. And and it's a lot nicer to have those terrariums as well being set up as a bioactive. But some of the people that I do deal with, though, I do try to get them to start off with the more simplistic side of things before they go into a bioactive, just to get that experience of dealing with the frogs first, and then kind of get educated and move into that aspect.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's where a lot of people they're like, "Oh, we're going to go bioactive," when really they should probably be more thinking about naturalistic in a way, which is like probably the better way to look at it. Because like for something to be,
Yeah,
I guess, small, like dart frogs, I guess you could definitely call that more bioactive. But like
100%.
for like if you were to
Yeah.
make like a snake, like a carpet python bioactive enclosure, like it would have to be like the
Mhm.
size of a room, and you would have to probably actually feed the isopods to be have
Yeah.
enough of them to eat the poop. It's
Mhm.
almost like incomprehensible how to actually do it, which is kind of funny, but like definitely that naturalistic, like get the live plants going, because like that does kind of help even for the not like I'm sure the animals appreciate some plants kind of going on, but as a keeper, right? We're also enjoying this thing. We chose to have this box in our house, kind of thing,
Correct.
where it's
Yeah.
definitely nice. So yeah, no, it's kind of good to see that you're able to kind
Mhm.
of steer people in the right direction with things instead of just yeah, because I obviously like some people probably want to go like head first right into I want to do the whole
Yeah.
massive bioactive, and it's like no, take it easy, learn how to keep the
Well,
animal, and
that's
then slowly.
and that's part of the thing. I was having a conversation with our customer when they are setting something up. I do have a lot of them that have pre-purchased stuff and said they're ready to go after they've already purchased that stuff. So I'll ask questions, and they'll tell me, hey, again, going back to a misting system, and for the white tree frogs, that's just a big no-no. So, we have those conversations, and, I tell them, yeah, you probably should save your money and don't open that and bring it back. And then explain to them, as to why that is, like, we did here. But yeah, the conversations are actually great to have. I do love educating and having the one-on-ones, and that's one thing I kind of miss about my store too, is having the face-to-face. Because right now everything's just messaging on Facebook or on Instagram back and forth, and giving the education. But I do miss the actual face-to-face aspect of teaching people. So I do have people that will come. I just had somebody come from Scarborough, Ontario, about a 3 hour drive, I guess, here to Sarnia, and maybe 3.5, I forget. But they made the drive here to come and pick up 3 frogs yesterday. It was nice to actually sit there and have a conversation with them about them, and be able to take our time and just teach them what I know, and where they're wanting to go with it, and have those resources to be able to do that. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like we as keepers and like stewards of the hobby, you gotta kind of
Hmm.
that's like the best part is when you get those like good customers that are like into it,
Yeah.
like or want
Hmm.
to get into it, kind of like as we are, kind of thing with
Yeah.
our mindsets and that it really makes it feel good, kind of thing. And then
Yeah.
obviously when you see them
For sure.
successful with it, it's like, okay, like I
Hmm.
did it right that time, and
Yeah.
they're happy, and that's what matters, kind
Hmm.
of thing. And the animal's healthy.
Yeah, and I will say this. So, this is my second time being on a podcast, and this is not really something I'm used to. So I get a little nervous, get off on a little tangent here once in a while, and get off topic. But, if anybody that's listening and you're looking for anything specific on the amphibian side, specifically tree frogs, is where I knowledge base really is. If you guys ever want to reach out and have a conversation, hey, I'm looking for this, and need a little advice on what I should be doing or should be doing, I'm more than happy to do that. Like, even if it doesn't come from me, I like having the conversation. Like, again, I go back to helping people out in the U.S. all the time, out in the U.K. I had a lady in the U.K. message me about she bought 3 frogs from a pet store there, and she said one of them had nose rub, and I called them, and they told me it's no big deal. Don't worry about it; it'll go away. Well, I told her, I said, send me a picture. So she sent me the picture, and I was like, wow, that's the worst case of nose rub I've ever seen. So yeah, that is a big deal. And here's what you need to do. Work on this. If it doesn't get any better, I'm going to suggest maybe make an event appointment and start this, or at least see how this goes and get a vet appointment. Because yes, this is a big deal. The store is wrong. Another gentleman, there's a gentleman in Iran actually. I haven't talked to him in over a year now, but they virtually don't have any reptile vets or anything like that over there. Their reptile and amphibian hobby, I guess, is extremely small over there. The vets that are regular vets over there don't have any knowledge base or the ability to get the medications or diagnose what these animals need. So he's had a couple of problems, and he's reached out to me for help, and I've given some advice to him, and those sorts of things I really enjoy. So even though I get off on a little tangent here, if anybody ever wants to reach out and wants to talk frogs, or needs some advice on setup, or even that you have a sick frog, if I can help, I'm absolutely more than happy to. It's just really important for me to be part of the hobby, and continue to help better it.
For sure. Yeah, I think you would do well on Dan's podcast too, because he's really the amphibian kind of podcast,
Yeah.
like central there kind of
Yeah.
thing. I
Yeah.
think you would do well on there. But yeah, no, podcasts are great. Like that's part of why we bring on guests like you. We go off in tangents. Like you get some of the other like the regular podcast guys that come on like all the snake podcasts basically like like
Yeah.
you never know what they're going to talk about because they just go on a tangent about the
Mhm.
like just anything really. It makes it interesting and fun too because you're really into it
Yeah.
when you're a listener kind of thing.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
with have you thought about? So I've always, since I was a kid, I've seen like what green tree frogs and maybe some of the other. I'm trying to think of them. Like, is it white lip tree frogs? But there's a bunch of like Eastern North American hylidae that are like honestly like really fascinating to me that I think would be like really cool in the hobby. I know some of them like
Mhm.
are obviously wild caught because in like Florida and South Carolina and stuff, you're still allowed to collect those species. Oh, barking tree frogs. Those are
Oh
pretty
yes.
neat
Yep.
looking too. Actually, even the gray tree
Mhm.
frogs are pretty cool. And I love the West Texas toads kind of thing. Those also. I just
Yeah.
love West
Yep.
Texas because I got Trans-Pecos rat snakes, and I love like
Nice.
West
Nice.
Tex the that whole culture down there because you're legally allowed to field herp and you can technically bring stuff home, although lots of people don't, but
Yeah.
you could kind of thing.
Mhm.
You can get your
Yep.
locality, you get your
Yep.
Davis Mountain red spotted toads and stuff would be kind of neat.
Mhm.
But yeah, no,
Yeah, you mentioned the gray tree frog. I'd love to have those, but they're an indigenous species here in Ontario, so we're not allowed to keep them.
that makes sense.
Um, but they are beautiful frogs, and I would love to be able to keep those. Um, but you know what? Repeat that question. What was the question in that
I'm
statement?
not sure what the I'm not even sure if I gave it a question, but I was like, have you thought about like working with like stuff like the green tree frogs and like the barking tree frogs or maybe even the Cubans, like those really
Um,
common species, but they are all wild caught. Like it'd almost be fun just to
yeah,
breed them to save bred them kind of thing. I feel like that's where they are
some
with
of those
me.
species, like the green tree frogs, are of course they're more tropical than the white tree frogs, but they're so close to the white tree frogs, as far as their look goes, and they're and I hate that, and I don't want to down any species because that's not what my purpose here is by any means. If I'm going to breed something, I need to be able to sell it without it putting me in the hole, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah,
Um, being a breeder, and I've heard several breeders in the past say this, they don't do this for the money. You're, you're full of shit, basically what it boils right down to. And I'm going to explain what I say here on that is, you know what, absolutely love what I do. I love animals, and it's a true passion of mine. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with having a passion that you want to be involved with and make a little money doing it and be part of who you are. I would love to be able to quit my day job and nothing more than breed frogs and deal with people and sell them. So, as a running the business side of this, you still have to be profitable without putting your own money into this, and it really make things work. The unfortunate part of that is like the green tree frogs, as an example, and they're a great little frog, so don't get me wrong. They're again, you got an explosive species that you're only going to sell maybe for $45 or something like
yeah,
that. That you really got to be careful of what you're bringing in, and not everybody's gonna want that particular species. There's a place for them, and it tends to be that they're all wild caught that are brought in, and it's somebody that's looking for a dirt cheap frog to get into the hobby with. And so I have to position myself like I've got some of the lower tier pricing frogs that I'm breeding, that the white tree frogs, red eye tree frogs, muff frogs. Those particulars are certainly, and I don't like the term beginner species at all, but more of I'll use maybe a starter species. The beginner term the term beginner species. You look years back, it almost turned into a term of just a throwaway animal. like goldfish. You know what I mean? So I try not to use that term too much, but um, I try to stick with stuff that I know I'm going to be able to sell, and and then I'm working myself into some more higher end morphs of the white tree frogs, and I've brought some of the fringe leaf frogs in. And there's another group of something here in Canada that I really want to get my hands on. There's one person that has it, and they may eventually let it go to me. So I'm not going to say what it is or too much anything about it because they're not in a rush to sell it. They're off in school. Somebody else is looking after it. And I really want to get my hands on it because this species also belongs in Ontario and it's a beautiful frog. And my passions is definitely brought towards bringing those different species in. Like you guys all know who Josh's Frogs is in the U.S., right?
Yeah, yeah,
You're very familiar with them. Not to be dumb about it or anything like that, but I kind of want to be Canada's version of that. I want to bring as many different species types into Canada as I can and offer that into our hobby. We've all lacked on those species for so long that some of us really need to change that. It doesn't matter if it's snakes or lizards or any others amphibians. Like you got your fire belly toads as an example. They were a dime a dozen, and
yeah.
they almost completely disappeared. Now there's a handful of breeders that are bringing them back again. I had a beautiful group. Here I'm going to go off on a little tangent again. But 4 years ago, I had a large group of fire belly toads, and I was putting them out there. I got a small group again, and they just haven't been breeding yet. But my large group I had about 25 of them in a very large breeder tank. And while my wife and I were both away at work, the bottom blew out of the tank. And I mean, not just crack, it blew out all over my basement, all the gravel ledges, all the different things that built up there, right out the bottom and gone. And not one frog made it. So, I don't even know where I was going with this, but anyway, the trying to be part of all that and even like the fire belly toads, those were something where a dime a dozen, literally back when I was a kid,
Yeah.
to almost disappearing out of the hobby
Eh,
completely.
even when I was a
So
kid,
for
or
me,
like
yeah,
like
yeah,
I
exactly.
think 7 8 years
Well,
ago, even right, like they was like, oh yeah, they're $12 a piece kind of thing. Same with newts before they were banned from being imported in, right? And actually, Jay in the comments, she around that time she was also breeding the fire bellies, and she like popped out
Mhm.
exantics and stuff from it because I think she was able to
Yep.
get some of that stock that came from the Vancouver aquarium. But yeah, no, right? They went from
Hmm.
that to how much were people like? It was almost stupid how much people were spending on fire. But like, I think some people are trying to sell them for like $100. But I think it's come down a bit now. But it's still like
Nelson
what they
Nelson
should be.
has some expensive ones.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that
I
too.
think Nelson was selling some blues for like $200 a piece or something like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think I remember saying yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
But even then, that's kind of what they should like. Not the 200, but they should be a
yeah.
$75 frog with how
Oh,
much you have to put
100%. They're
into them to because they
yeah,
hatch out so tiny. You have to feed pinhead crickets for
yeah,
until they get that.
and I agree. And I agree completely because again,
well,
it goes back um, to profitability for you as a hobby breeder or a person that is running a business as a breeder and trying to expand things out further. Like my hydro bills are huge. I've got lots of, my cricket bill is quite large. My feeder bill, so in order to continue doing what we do, you've got to make money off your hobby or your business and what you're doing, or none of us will be around to continue doing what we're doing. Um, and it just boils right down to it that that is always going to be part of what we're doing. It doesn't matter if a pet store, if you've got a brick and mortar store, You got to be profitable or you're not going to be around. And that goes back to the same thing as every aspect of the hobby. It's all tied in together.
Yeah, your discussions made me realize that I have kept frogs before. I did. I actually had fire-bellied toads in the '90s.
Yeah,
It was like the typical little goldfish type pet you would just go buy, and it
yeah.
was under $10, and I probably had like three or four, and I had a fun. I have no idea what happened to them. Like obviously, I
Mm,
either got rid of them or they died, but
yeah.
it's kind of funny to think of it that way. Yeah,
Well,
long
you
time.
know, and that's the thing going back to those cheaper animals and the lack of knowledge that was in those pet stores at the time. We've come so much further than that now, as keepers and even and the businesses and stuff. And you know, with Facebook and the internet and Google, there's so much more information to be had that we can teach ourselves to be better people and better keepers with our animals. So yeah, you know, back in the day, you know, those were $10 frogs or $10 toads, and you know, they dared, you know, we've almost lost them because of that being so cheap. And then of course there's been you know government bans and stuff like that on the toads and newt species and stuff coming into Canada. And because they were so cheap, nobody was breeding them. You know, who want and it goes back to your same question about you know the cheaper, more affordable green tree frog. Um, Nobody's going to breed something that
Yeah.
they're only going to get $10 for. Like
I
back in
think
the
my
day,
my thought with those was more that it was just something like that, like there's always that like side of me that like I know they're not worth that much in
mm,
terms of at least wild caught as of now,
yeah,
but just that like I don't know, there's always that like hmm I've I've seen these when I was a kid, and now that I'm back in the hobby and I've never seen them because
mm,
people stopped bringing them into BC where they're
yeah,
illegal finally. It's like I
yeah,
wonder how those would be to breed, just to like obviously like you need to make it worth it. So which it
mm,
probably wouldn't be worth it kind of thing, especially those and probably Cubans and some of the other ones. But it
yeah.
just like that like thought of like it would be kind of fun to breed. But then that also goes down the route of me kind of in my stage of my reptile like Noah's Ark of like I wonder if this could be the
Yeah.
next big thing. Like probably greens wouldn't be the next
100%.
big thing, but like thinking about all those North American species that are common or could be collected that are like not in the pet trade, but like you never know, like like western green toads and red spotted toads. Like
Mm.
the western green toads are cool. Like those
They
would be
are they
something
are
fun to
really
keep.
cool.
Yeah, because you have
Yeah,
a small
those
group of
are
those, right?
absolutely amazing tools. Yep. Yeah, that's the one thing I forgot about too. And you know what? They came in wild caught, and I was very close to getting to the breed. It took me a while to even get them to call. And they went into Amblexus, but I just couldn't get the females to release any eggs. But those Western green toes, they're so full of character. They'll come right out of their holes where they're hiding when you open the door of the terrarium. They come running out. They'll come right up to the edge and sit there and watch you. So yeah, they're pretty cool. Yeah, that's them right there. Yeah, that's awesome. They're a great little toad. So if anybody can get their hands on them, by all means, they are definitely a great species.
Oh yeah, yeah, they're neat.
Yeah. So, so if we could shift the topic a bit, I want to go back to what you were talking about. So not being ashamed of wanting to make money or breeding for money and all that. And I just want to put my 2 cents that I've already probably said a couple of times. I think it's great when your collection starts paying for itself, when you produce enough to pay your hydro bill, to pay your feeding bill, to pay and all that. And I think there's no shame in making a few dollars. I think it's great if you can manage to get there. So my big thing now is, would you mind going over, let's say you've bred White's tree frogs, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So let's go over like you having I don't know, is it a clutch? Is it a pod? A chunk of
Spawn.
eggs?
The
Spawn?
spawn.
All right.
Yep.
I knew that. I was just trying to test you.
No worries.
So you have a spawn of White's tree frogs. I'm going to guess they lay a certain number. You can go through that. Can you drive me through the process of how you would, the process of like each step, how you would eventually separate them to the point where you would sell them? And if you sell them for $25 each. Did you actually make money from the all the month and weeks of separating, feeding, and all that to get there? I'm just kind of curious to see, because to me it feels like the $20 animal you might not make money, but if you have the morph that's worth 60, then at that point you're making maybe 30,
Correct.
$40 an animal, right? So I'm kind of looking to
Correct.
get your input on how you get there, just because treat me like a guy that knows nothing here, and it is.
Yep.
So
So basically, going back to the financial side of that, you know, I'm making enough right now. Like like a white tree frog, I'm selling for $75 a frog. So basically, I get by with just a little better than breaking even, I guess, at this point. It pays my hydro bill. It's paying for all my feeders. Um, you know, any extras that I need to purchase, lighting, new terrariums, that sort of thing. So it's certainly not something that I'm going to go and retire on and quit my day job to do. There's a lot of work that goes into this as well. And that is the low end of things. And I'm working on some higher end species that I will sell between 475 and $600 a frog. Those are the aspects that I'm now working in and was hoping I would by this spring I was going to get into. We had that little setback in the wintertime. Our boxer of 12 years old had was diagnosed 2 days before Christmas and passed away January 2nd. And it because we're such animal lovers here, it hit us deeply. And I took a step back from my social media and maintained the frogs where they were at and didn't put the effort into breeding anymore at that time. I just wasn't in the headspace for it. Um, so once I get these higher end animals breeding, um, my goals and my ideas is this is going to be a bit more of a game changer for me to bring me up to the next level, and it's been a long time getting there. So anybody that's breeding and you see all these numbers that I've just shut off about, 1,000 eggs. You got to keep in mind, I still have to, like you said, the cost associated of maintaining each and every one of those frogs from the egg to a froglet. One spawn could easily take me 4 months to sell off. And I've got hydro and feed that's associated with that for sure. And a monthly hydro bill of mine is almost $400, and my feeding bill is probably $500 a month. So you get a lot of factors in there. Light bulbs burn out. You want to expand something, so now you got to go buy new terrarium and fixtures and stuff to fill it. So it's not a get rich scheme whatsoever. I've seen people come and go in this hobby that think they're gonna make a living or get rich off it real quick, and those are generally the people that will not last, and for good reason. Um, I won't name any names, and if he's listening, good for him. But there's a gentleman that I was kind of helping out or mentoring a little bit. He messaged me and asked questions, and he made absolutely no effort to do better or anything of that nature. And long story short, I had to cut him off just because he just seemed like he was just in it for the money. I got a couple messages from people that he ripped off, and it's like, okay, well, you are just in this for the money. There's no passion here. You're not willing to learn by any means because I've tried teaching you. And the last straw for me is that I had somebody on Facebook message me and saying, you're friends with Facebook friends with so and so, they just ripped me off. I need your help. Well, I don't like getting drawn into other people's drama. So I explained to them that I'm just Facebook friends, that's it. And then went over to my block um, option on that gentleman's page and hit block and was just done. So, you know, there is those people out there that are in it just to make money and are giving us a bad name here, as we talked about before, as being a downfall for our hobby. But I would like to get to the point where this is a much more profitable business for me because, I'm 52 years old. I'm going to hit a point where I'm going to want to retire. And I would like to ramp this up right into that and do this also continuous throughout my retirement as well. I want to have, you know, 25 different species of tree frogs and be able to offer those and still educate and be part of the hobby and be able to, travel around a little bit to the expos and contribute. And unfortunately, that all costs money to be part of that. We got some of our larger YouTube tubers that's what they do now. They make money to educate by being a YouTuber. They don't have a day job. I want to breed, sell frogs, and I want to educate people.
I'm not sure
And
you should use the word educate with YouTubers, but anyway, keep going.
you know what? You're correct.
Entertain. Entertain.
You're entertain. That's a better terminology. You are 100% correct because there's a
Some do,
few of
but
them out
most
there that
entertain.
I have no respect for. But yeah, I digress. I won't go to that level and cause any trouble today. But yes, so just using those YouTubers as an example of being reptile entertainers. Then we'll put it that way. Um, they're making money doing that. They're entertaining. They're being part of the hobby. To some degree, that has its purpose still. But I want to be part of the hobby in my own way. I want to be able to educate and bring a better animal to our market, and that that needs to have some profitability with it for any of us breeders that are going to continue to do this to be part of it. Or if that doesn't happen, none of us are going to be here, and then it goes back to all being wild caught stuff that are being taken out of the wild again. It'll digress and go backwards, and we don't need that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I agree with you. And the advantage of you still working, kind of the same thing for me. If I have a garbage season where I don't make money, it doesn't really matter, right? Because it's
Correct.
nice to make extra money. It's nice to have
Yep.
like that
Hmm.
extra spending cash to
Yep.
usually just reinvest in more expensive animals to level up your game for the next years, right? Let's be honest, that's what we do. If I make an extra 10
100%.
grand this year, I'll probably buy a pair for 6 grand and this,
Yep.
and then, oh, well, I guess I didn't really make money this year, but you did, right?
Yeah,
So
and we just
we,
well, you're reinvesting back into what you're doing, and
yeah,
that's good.
we call it reinvesting, but let's be honest, you're buying cool shit you want. That's what we're doing. Like it's, you
Yes.
can call it
Yeah.
reinvesting, but I mean,
Well, you're right. You're correct. Like I had a bucket list species of the Craspies, the fringe leaf frogs, and they're $600 frogs, plain and simple. And in the fall, I was able to get three of them, and that was the investment was put there, or you can call it something else. Sure, eventually those are going to be bred back in and sold off to other hobbyists as well. So, buying cool shit and reinvesting back into our hobby or into what I do here, into my hobby or and business is to rebuild, to continue to build. I don't take any of it out for myself whatsoever. Anything that I do make gets invested back into to continue to grow, like buying these French leaf frogs. When I get my higher end morphs of the white tree frogs and or the white tree frogs and then the French leaf frogs breeding, I'm gonna invest that back in. Like you said, I'm gonna buy more cool shit, and then I'm gonna and breed those, and I'm gonna sell them too. So I want 25 different species of tree frogs. You know what I mean? I want to be one of those guys that I'm the go-to for all the white tree frog or all the tree frogs in Canada. That's my whole purpose of this. I'm driven by that. I want to be that guy. There's guys that are the ball python guys. There's guys that are the crested gecko guys, and the guys that have all the monitors or the tortoises or turtles, right? So that's what drives me. I want to be that guy. I want to be a big part of the hobby. I want to educate, and I'm gonna make a little money on the side doing it.
Yeah.
It's just all part of the process.
Yeah. Yeah. What actually really interests me is when you're. Can you still hear me? Or did that?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay. Yeah.
I just lost one.
Oh,
One
all
second.
good. I'll keep talking.
I can still hear you though. I laughed and it popped out of my ear.
Actually, that's good that they're working well, because like sometimes people have issues with AirPods, but like this show's been honestly really good with the AirPods in. So yeah, it's but what really gets me turning when you say 25 different species of frogs that you want to have, it's a systems you're gonna build to raise up all those frogs, and to do that, like the Ron St. Pierre part of me, where because he's a big systems guy, like he did with the blue tongues and the emeralds and the.
Yep.
And anything he's done is the systems of like whether you're going to use totes or you're going to use fish tanks, and how you're going to stack it all and run it.
100%.
That's what really gets me going, because I love the building of stuff. It's like it's almost like doing it is fun, obviously, but almost like the building of it is another like kind of fun aspect of it too, and fiddling with it to figure out what works best.
And like you said, that process that you're putting all together, it's like a machine. You know what I mean? You get all these different facets of everything that's going on. Um, I was invited down by Joshua at some point, and I'm going to wait now for a while, but I was invited down for a tour of Joshua's Frogs facilities down there in Michigan, and just haven't had a chance to do it. And now with some of the political stuff that's going on down there, I'm not going to update my passport and go across. But um, right now, I've got things in two different parts of my house, and that's the other big thing for me is when we're talk about profitability. I want to invest back in to a point where I'm going to have what I would call a real facility. I want that space that is 100% dedicated to what I do, and it's going to cost some money. I am like what I could see myself doing at some point is buying a commercial building and running things out of that one day. As part of an investment as well. We have to think of these things if we're going to be around for a long time, and continue to do what we do. The thought processes have to be there where you're going next. So at some point, I could see myself having a larger online presence and having a facility that I'm going to invest in to work out of. So that all ties together for me as well. It's just not wanting to stay a basement breeder and selling three species of frogs, and then 10 years down the road I'm gone, right? This is a continuous build for me. And I know it's going to take some time, and I know I'm going to get there one day, but it just goes through all the processes of what we're talking about right now, just continuing to build something. And this is where I'm hoping this will go.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that's definitely like the right way to do it, is to take your steps instead of just going, well, you've already done the pet store thing, so that stuff has going with it, kind of thing. So taking your time and doing things at the correct pace. Not that there's ever a correct pace to build something, but not sprinting into something over your head, right?
Well, if I had $1 million, I know exactly what I'd want to do. But going back to the pet store thing, I made some mistakes and I learned by them when you're starting a new business and stuff like that. If I look back what I know now and what I did then, I would certainly change a whole lot of things from what I did and decisions I made at that point. But yeah, if I had $1 million to go to do what I want to do right now, I'd be there. I'd do it. I'd quit my job and I'd be all over it, and make my online presence 1,000 times bigger than what it is.
Do you have any other questions, Dominic?
I kind of do actually. So I you said you're 52, right? So you're probably what do you do as a day job? Just real quickly.
I'm a traffic manager for a building supply company. I got a few guys under me. I watch over our daily operations of the materials coming in and out.
Cool. Okay. Interesting. When do you plan on retiring? Are you thinking 55, 60, 65?
Well, if I'm going to go away from that job, it'll be between 60 and 65.
Okay. So you
So
still have a
you know,
pretty long way to get there. So you have a
yeah.
let's so how are you looking at ramping? Are you looking at slowly building? Let's say you start with 60 and 5 years from now, you'd be looking at maybe 100 by I'm just trying to figure out how you would be doing it because there's a part of me that like I can retire in about 10 years and I've been thinking about it and I like the idea of taking care of my animals and when I'm off I spend a lot more time. I could probably spend 2-3 hours every single day if I wanted to, but there's
Sure.
a part of me that doesn't want to have 300 or 400 animals, man. Like even if I was retired, that's a gigantic workload. So I don't know. I'm kind of looking to see in your aspects because you probably don't want to go from 60 to 300 when you retire, but the ramping almost makes it too hard while you're still working. I'm kind of just wondering if you thought it through of how to get yourself ramped up to when you get to the retirement age.
So right now it's working with the higher end species that I've got to get me pushed over the little bit of a hump that I'm on right now. The biggest factor for me is going to be the correct space to be working out of. I'm working on two different levels of my home. I got a room down in my basement and another on the main floor. And, as the other half won't let me take any more of the house over. So that poses a problem for me as far as expanding too much further right now. Um, but I want to be able to have that workspace centered and organized without, this being here and this being there and this being there. Organization with what I'm doing with all these frogs is key. At this point, my next step here to get better organized is I'm looking to build maybe like a 24-foot by 24-foot building on my property here, and move everything, heated and electrical and all that, obviously added into it, um, and move everything and organize into that. I haven't done a website yet. There's a gentleman out west that is a hobbyist that has followed me since the beginning of the Inspired Frog that said he'd help me out when I'm ready. Um, but it's those steps. So my next step would be to have that 24 by 24-foot building that I can bring that into, organize, be prepared, and have everything streamlined to where I want to be. And right now I'm operating on Instagram and Facebook and Kijiji as well. Um, I want to get that website going. I want to have a proper online store. And then you know what? There's probably going to be a point where I'm going to have to hire people to help me. Um, I have a very strong entrepreneurial mind when it comes to that, and I have a hard time just allowing it to stay at this level, and when I'm being driven to get it up to this point. So that's the starting point where I need to be next. And then, and as an investment point of part of my retirement down the road, yeah, I've even thought about investing into some commercial property. And one day when I decide that I'm all done, I can sell, the building off, sell the frogs off, and have those investments just to be done. If we're getting to that technical of it. But the ramping up of the species, getting from say 60 frogs to 300, a lot of that is, for me, is going to be better organized because you have tadpole bins that need to be cleaned every couple of days, water changes every 2 days. Then you water bowls that need to be changed every day, terrariums that need to be cleaned, and of course, the more you have, the more upkeep that's going to be. So at this point, I have to get better organized and have everything in a better system than what I have at the moment to get to that. And right now, I'm at a spot where I really can't do much more with the space that I have, and I know that. So I've run out of room. I'm not as well organized, even in that space, to get to those 300 frogs. As a personal collection. So it's those steps that I will need to get there that that's in my mind that we will get there at some point.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was a great answer.
Sounds like you got a plan.
We're
Obviously,
working on it.
It'll evolve.
I'm a big dreamer. It may not hit to that level, but I'm going to strive for it. And it makes me a better person and a better breeder to strive for better anyway. And even if I don't hit that level where I want to be, hey, who knows where I'll land in between? And that's kind of the exciting part of it too.
And just by curiosity, I said the number 300 at random. Is 300 kind of like your goal in the future, or are you looking at higher or lower?
It's not so much of a goal as to how many frogs. I want to offer multiple different species of different amphibians, and it's not going to just be tree frogs. As I grow, I love newts. I got Spanish ribbed newts. I got some toads. I've got some chubby frogs. There's a few different geckos, as I mentioned. There's a few things that resonate with me. Like Josh's frogs, they just don't do frogs anymore. They got spiders and geckos and different things on their website. I'm gonna be like that. Once I get better organized, I can figure out where things need to go. It's not so much I have a goal of say 300 frogs. I want to provide as many species of frogs and amphibians in general to offer to the public. It's been the amphibian hobby has been the little brother to the reptile hobby forever, and the amphibian hobby has a lot of room to grow. I would like to see more people get interested in it. That's why I think that anybody that's got a reptile room, you know, there's lots of cool frogs and toads out there, and newts and different things like that you guys are missing out on. You're missing a huge part of the hobby. That in that reptile room, there's so many other things. Like it's the basic things too that could even bring some joy. The most basic dart frog that you can imagine, I no longer have, and I regret it, and I'm going to get them again, is the Santa Isabella dart frog. They have the most amazing call to me that I could ever imagine. To hear them calling through my house is so cool. And I've had different dart frogs, and
can you
to
make
me,
that
the
call
Santa
for us?
Nope, not even in the slightest. You'll never talk me into it.
Honestly, Dom, it's like that. Whatever
Google it.
dart
Google
frog
it.
call you've probably heard, it's probably them. Because actually, at Strange, Rob, he has them at the back of the shop, and you just like every time you're in the fish section, you just hear them chirping. You just hear them going the whole time.
There's so many cool dart frogs out there, and they're my favorite. The Santa Isabellas, and you know what? You can pick them up for $25 a frog.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
And they're still my favorite dart frog. And and I've gotten away from them. I've steered myself definitely in a different direction with dart frogs, and I should have kept the Santa Isabellas. I shoot myself on the foot for not keeping them because I missed that call. Um, But just to have, as you go back to the original question you had, I think there was the species counts and stuff, but it's going to be a lot of more quality than quantity, I guess is the better terminology for it. Um, there's definitely different frogs that deserve to be in this hobby here, or in amphibians in general, that Canada doesn't have and the US and the UK do. We need to have those here. It'll strengthen us. It'll have something better to offer and a much more selection to keep, you know. And I just want to be like again, I want to be part of that. Want to offer it.
Yeah, I think that's the same problem just about everywhere in this hobby.
Yep.
Whether you'd be in snakes, geckos, or certain animals, we just don't have the same supply and the same demand as in the States or anywhere else. So
Yep.
Yeah.
kind of
And I
frustrating.
could, yeah, and I can certainly see part of it. Like the population of Canada is the same basically the same population as the state of California. So we're definitely going to be smaller here, but I do think as the amphibian hobby grows, it is missing a lot of the mark, and there's a lot of room to grow with that yet.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think like even with like the newts, like the yellow spotteds, like those are something that I think as a guy that likes aquaculture as well, like fish keeping
Yep.
is like those things. I have fun keeping those because it's like, well, I could do them in like a nice scaped like tank, or
Hmm.
I could set them up like kind of basic, but like I feel like there's some of the, even like the aquascaping guys maybe would even like, because you don't,
Yep.
and they're awesome because you don't have to keep a heater in with them. You just keep them in your basement, or keep them, if you keep the house cool enough, you just keep them room temperature, and they do
Oh yeah,
fantastic. They
it's
look
great.
fantastic. You keep them fully
Yep.
aquatic, or you could have fun with the paludarium, but like they're just so cool.
Well, and that goes back to, like you said, the fish hobby. The fish hobby was a big thing for me. That's what I started the store for. Um, but even the fish hobby, the newts and the fire belly toads and different things like that, you know, either are aquatic or semi-aquatic, and it ties back into a fish room. If you got fish room, you can keep newts and fire belly toads and have mossy frogs and set up a paludarium. I got invited to, and I haven't done it yet. I'm waiting for this group of fire belly toads to breed and to start breeding my Spanish room newts again. But I was invited to the Sarnia Aquarium Society here in my area to be a speaker at. So that is one thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to have the same type of conversation. That I'm promoting here is tying these hobbies together a little bit more, instead of the large separation gaps that there has been between the fish hobby, the amphibian hobby, and then the reptile hobby itself, because there's transition animals in there that could all work together. High humidity, weather, in a fish room. There's dart frogs and mossy frogs that would do well in those fish rooms as well, right? So there's just so many things that we can tie together to change the hobby and grow it and all work together and make things just a little more interesting, a little bit better. So, you know, I do promote those things quite often, and I will continue to push them.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic, and I think honestly that's a pretty good way to end off this podcast. I think, unless you have any more questions, Don.
Nope, I was actually just about to kind of go down that lane. So, well, first, Nathan, honestly, thank you. That was actually quite informative and actually quite fun. I'll be honest, like
I
I
knew you would
enjoyed
like
it.
it.
So
Right on.
I really only did it for Michael, but I still enjoyed it.
Well, I
So
appreciate everything you guys having me on here. If I've gone on into a tangent and got sidetracked a couple of times, I apologize. It's
you
easy for me to do. I get a little nervous, so I get chatty and veer off to some of the topics
But
there that
that's
we
usually
had.
what gets more interesting, honestly. Like those conversations where you ask a question and you end up talking about 10
Yep.
things on the right side, and that's okay. That's what we like.
Yeah.
Like it's usually where you get the better story because you end up talking about what you want to talk, right? We're just asking questions to try to get you to talk. Really, that's the
Yep.
only thing. Like people log on here usually to hear about the guest, maybe a little bit about us eventually, but nobody cares about Michael or me, man. They want to hear about the guests. It's just how it is. Like, let's be honest.
Right on, man.
Um,
Right on.
so Nathan, you talked a lot about how you like helping others, or you want people to be able to reach out to you. Are you able to drop any of the social medias or anything like that? How we can reach you?
Yeah. Yeah. So on my Instagram page, you're just going to look up the Inspired Frog. My business page on Facebook is also the Inspired Frog, but I need to be a little more active on that. There's also my personal Facebook page, Nathan Malott. You'll see and it's Malott. You'll see the Inspired Frog logo on my personal page as well. So anybody can reach out anytime if you just want to talk amphibians, or if you actually need some advice on care, setting something up, or you need some advice for a sick frog. I am more than happy to help at any time.
Awesome. Thank you, Nathan. I really appreciate it. If you just want to hang on for a second after we're done here, I think Dom's
Will
going
do.
to close it out.
Yeah, just in case to make sure it uploads. To everybody, thank you again for logging on. From my understanding, next Sunday we are not on. Is that right, Mike? So
Yeah, I'll be in Edmonton this weekend, so it'll be the Sunday after. So this show will be released not this weekend, but next weekend. So Terry's show from Sunday will be this Saturday, kind of thing.
So it'll be live, Nathan, in about a week and a half. Then, or not live,
Yeah.
but
Well,
released,
this will be out there, but it'll be
it's
released
on
all
YouTube, but not released on the podcast.
Okay.
So everybody,
Sounds
thank
good.
you for logging on. Appreciate it. If you're listening to it on YouTube, again, please click all those little buttons, the little bell, the little, I don't know, follow buttons and all that kind of stuff. It helps. If you are listening to it on Spotify, on what the heck, Apple Podcasts, all those kind of things, please subscribe as well. We appreciate you. And to everybody who stuck it out all the way to the end, thank you. Appreciate it. We will see you next Sunday, which this should be a Sunday, in a week and a half. Everybody have a good night. Have a good week. And thanks, Nathan.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
And bye.